All right, everyone. I couldn't be more delighted and excited to present this new guest today, Susan Hailey, phenomenal leader in talent acquisition and DEI, has an amazing background that we'll jump into here in just a second. But Susan, welcome to the show. Really excited to have you here.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm thrilled to be here.
So Susan and I worked together at eBay, and she was a fantastic leader for me. I learned so much from her. She's got a very, very impressive background, has been at a variety of different companies, and in fact, is also a board chair for Harvard. Is that correct?
Yeah, the Harvard Business School Alumni Association of Northern California.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about that. I'm really curious.
Oh yeah. Well, it's Harvard Business School has alumni clubs throughout the world, and the largest one is in New York, as you might imagine. The second largest is in Boston, which also makes sense. But the third largest is actually here in Northern California. So we have a lot of HBS grads that have made their way to the Bay Area, no doubt due to some of the technology opportunities here, as well as the entrepreneurial ecosystem. So we have a very large club, and I have in the past been the president and done other kinds of volunteer jobs, and now I'm the chair of the board of the club.
That's amazing. That sounds like a really cool opportunity. Um, Fantastic. And also, you've had a variety of great executive roles. So you've been vice president of global talent acquisition, DE&I for Open Text. You've been the leader of global talent acquisition for metadata, head of global talent for eBay marketplaces, and on and on and on. You've had just this wealth of knowledge and opportunities and skills that I think our listeners will be receive a lot of benefits from, of hearing your advice and secrets of the candidate experience and the recruiting experience, etc. But what I'd love to hear from you is, and what I ask all our guests on the show is, who is your favorite artist or band or singer, just to keep it human and see, what's Susan Hailey listening to? If she's listening to this, if I listen to it, maybe I'll have the success that she's had.
Well, it's definitely old school. Probably goes along with my era, but I love the Beatles. So let's just put that at the top of the list, because nobody gets better than the Beatles, in my opinion. But I'd say the second artist that I really, I probably as am inspired by is Stevie Wonder.
Oh,
So I love Stevie Wonder, and I've always loved him, and I love all his songs, and everything I listened to way back when I listen to now, and it's still as fresh and amazing as it was then.
that's awesome. I love it. I love it. I'm sure a lot of listeners will relate to that great music. So thanks for sharing that. All right. Well, Susan, let's jump right into some of the questions. So the first question really is about the secrets that you would want candidates to know to help them through the hiring process. What are the secrets that you would share with candidates?
Oh my gosh. Well, I guess on some level, it's the same for every level job, whether it's an entry level position or a senior executive position. But I think that number one, do your homework on the organization that you'll be interviewing with. So, understand what they are doing and how they create value in the world. And from a recruiter perspective, what is the story on that company? And making sure that you're, as a candidate, you understand what the story is for that company. Because, and I think the other thing, you and I talked about this earlier, is also really be diligent about what kind of culture the organization has. So as a candidate, sometimes, and many of us in recruiting, we pursue candidates, and sometimes, number one, they may not do that kind of research because they're in a job and they're perfectly happy. So that seems like would be reasonable. But at a point where you might become really interested in taking that job, really do your homework. Is this going to be a good fit for me?
Yeah.
Because the same job in different companies can be a very different experience
Yeah.
because of the culture and the drivers and the types of people you'll be around. So just as a candidate, I always say, it's as much about what you bring to the company and what they need as it is about how good a fit that will be for you.
Yeah, I love that. And it is so important. And you and I were talking about, you mentioned that the soil of a company and how important it is to be good soil. I really like that analogy that you shared with me earlier before we started the podcast. And it's so important. We spend so much time at work, and we really should be, and sometimes it's hard to be picky and choosy because we have to support our families and we have to do certain things. But at the end of the day, as you build great skills and you have great experience and you're able to produce a lot of really great outcomes, finding the place that's going to be right for you, where you can thrive and grow and be successful, and that you can also help other people. Like it's so critical. So I'm really glad that you brought that up. It's so important as a candidate to be thinking like that. Well, Susan, that's super helpful feedback for candidates. Let's shift gears and talk about hiring managers for just a second. You've worked with hundreds, maybe hundreds of thousands of hiring managers over your career. And, the hiring process is really important for hiring managers. What advice would you give them, whether they're brand new or whether they're seasoned hiring managers? What have you found have been the secrets of success that help hiring managers be effective?
And partnering, as you said, partnering with hiring managers has been a long standing skill that any of us that do recruiting have the opportunity to do. So I guess from a hiring manager perspective, if you aren't familiar with the process of hiring, and then equally, if you're not familiar with the way to conduct a great interview, I highly recommend get some training, whether it's in your company or even online. There's lots of different places you can get that experience, because we have to remember, especially as recruiters, we have to remember that we may be doing this all day long, but for a hiring manager, maybe once a year, maybe
Sure.
it's not something they do as often as we do it. So when I partner with hiring managers, I try to understand how much experience they have with hiring.
Yeah.
And if they have a lot, that's great. And I can walk them through maybe some of the particular nuances for the organization that we're in. If they don't, though, I really encourage them to spend a little bit of extra time either with their recruiter or with me to just make sure they understand how this process works. Because conceptually, I think a lot of people believe they know how to recruit because it's a pretty easy thing to explain to people. But when you get into the not the day-to-day, but the real mechanics and the process of it, there's lots and lots of nuances to it. And one other piece I do with hiring managers too is make sure you've got a great job description. And if you don't know how to write one, or ask for help. We collectively, HR and TA, will help you do that, because it makes the time we spend in the market so much more effective if we are
Yes.
really clear about what we're looking for. And that's really on the hiring manager to be really clear about what they want. And it doesn't have to be perfect, and it can change. It doesn't have to be perfect the first time out, because once you start seeing candidates, you may realize, you know what, I don't really need that skill, but what I do need is this other skill that so and
Yes.
so brought to the table. And I
Yes.
didn't think of it when I was writing my job description. So I also tell hiring managers, be flexible in that process, because it's to your benefit to learn in this process what you really need. Now, maybe you've been doing this for a while, you know what you're looking for, you're really clear. It's good. It's a well-written job description. So we, as the HR and TA professionals, we can run off and go find you exactly what you want. But if you tell us, and the flip side to it, though, is if it's not very clear, then we will be bringing you all kinds of people, like really all kinds of people.
Right. Right.
You're going to look at all these kinds of people and say, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. That's not what, but we can probably find something in the job description that says, this is what you said you wanted. And you wanted
Yes.
this, and you wanted that, and you wanted this. So you're going to see a whole bunch of that, which is, interesting, but probably not the best use of your time or the recruiter's time. So I'd say being really clear on the job description, being clear on the process, being clear on interview questions, right? And making sure the interview questions aren't just getting at what the skills are that the person brings, but also how they do that work.
Yeah.
And is the way they do that work, the how of what they do, does that fit with your culture? So quick example would be if your culture is very relationship oriented and you're interviewing a candidate, let's just say I'm a hiring manager, I'm interviewing a candidate, and I can pretty much tell that they are transaction oriented. They just get the job done, they go to the next thing. They don't really talk, make friends with other people in the company. They may be able to do the job really well, but they may not be a great fit
Right.
for the way that your company does that type of work.
Yeah.
So, so there's a lot of different pieces to it for a hiring manager to consider. And I try to be really patient with hiring managers because honestly, they aren't doing this all day long. They are running their business, they're running their department or whatever it is they're doing. And our job is to make that as easy for them as possible to hire the most fabulous person for the job that they need filled.
Yeah, I think you're spot on. And as I think about the hiring managers that I've worked with in the past, or any hiring manager, like, you're busy. This isn't your full-time job of hiring like it is for us in the recruiting space. And you're worried about, what's happening within your business and your sales or technology, whatever it may be that you're focused on. And then you're trying to hire this team on the side. But to your point, if hiring managers will just take a step back and breathe for a minute and really spend a little bit of extra time on this process, it's amazing what the output can be if you do that. And we've both seen that, right? We've seen it where hiring managers will take that time and put the effort in and they get a really great result. And then you'll see hiring managers just, I just need a person in the seat. I just need a person in the seat. And yeah, we can do that. We can get that person in the seat, but guess what? They're not going to stay in that seat for very long.
Right.
And you're going to be back in the same situation you were before. So I love what you've highlighted, because I think these things are really helpful for hiring managers. And I've also found that some of the most powerful hiring managers that I've seen have just been humble about the process. Exactly what you said. Like, they're willing to kind of learn the process and ask a lot of questions about it and be open to new ways of doing things. And those leaders, those hiring managers, I feel like have been the most effective of everyone. So great insight, Susan. I really like what you've shared there. All right. The last grouping is our famous recruiting teams. So whether you're a coordinator, sourcer, recruiter, talent acquisition manager, or director or executive, what secrets would you share for the recruiting team to be successful in the hiring process?
Well, and you brought up exactly the important question or sub question, which is it depends on your role. So if you are a coordinator, or you're a sourcer, or you're a recruiter or a manager, these are all a little bit different. I think as an overall talent acquisition leader, I like to get it to a little bit of a soundbite for each role. So, and each role is really, really important, but they do different things. They facilitate different parts of the process. So if you're a coordinator, which can often be an entry level job for someone into recruiting.
Yep.
And I love hiring coordinators that actually want to do recruiting, and versus perhaps wanting to be an assistant, an executive assistant, because a coordinator job is very much, to me, the glue of the recruiting process. So again, there's some tools out there now that sort of help with calendaring and this and that, but there's still a need for a person to be aware of what's happening on each assignment that they are looking after, if you will, along with their recruiting team. So, and I've always said the coordinators, and I can't remember, I think I maybe learned this at eBay, and maybe it was through you, Jeremy, but that coordinators own the candidate experience.
Yes.
They are your first friend when you join a company. And truly, they are probably the person you know the best, in addition to your recruiter. So, and they're the ones that greet you at the, again, this is in the old world, but they would greet you at the door when you show up, or they make sure that the Zoom is set up before your conversation with the recruiter or the hiring manager. But they really are your point of contact. And I think great coordinators embrace that and really like that definition of what they do, not just, being on their computer, not talking to people. I mean, they really are part of the process in terms of also presenting what the culture of the organization looks like.
100%.
So it's just
100%.
it's a really important job, is kind of the glue. Sourcers, I mean, sourcers are their own. I mean, they basically bring us the products, if you will, in kind of a manufacturing sense, but they bring us the people. They are in the market. They are talking to candidates. They are connected to different groups that might have the target types of employees we're looking for. They know what's going on in the market. So anytime anybody at any of my companies would say, what's really going on in the market, I would always call the sourcers and say, what's going on in the market? Unless it was a search area like on the exec side that I might have been involved with, because they really know. They know what people are saying about the company. They know what the role is all about. They sell the company. They know the elevator pitch, because they're the ones reaching out to candidates to engage them, whether it's by LinkedIn or by phone or video or whatever the mechanism is, but they're the ones that tell the story of the company. And they also do a little bit of screening, enough to be confident that if I take this person to my recruiter, it's a good chance that they're pretty well qualified. There might be other things I don't know, because I'm more measured on the number of people I'm bringing in.
Sure.
So that's sort of the sourcing job. I think the recruiter job, and many recruiters have done all of these jobs, but I'd say in a bigger organization where you have those three functions, the recruiter is really all about the hiring manager and making sure they really understand what the hiring manager is looking for. And also what some of the other departments are doing, because typically a candidate is not going to just talk to one department. I mean, sometimes they might, if it's a big company, but in other organizations, they might be talking to different departments. So the recruiter can sort of be the coach to the candidate about what to expect and who they're looking for. Again, this is all in addition to the assessment of that candidate. Do they really have the skills we need? Do they have the type of behaviors we're looking for? Would they be a good fit in our organization? I mean, the recruiter is kind of making all of those judgments prior to getting the candidates to speak to the hiring managers. And then as TA leaders, whether you're a manager or director, I mean, your job typically, I mean, the best managers in that department that I've worked with have been recruiters before. So they really understand the job. Yeah. And they know when someone is struggling. They know when to intervene. Let's say if there's, something scratchy going on with a hiring manager, or maybe to your point earlier, we were talking about needing to scale up or scale down. I mean, they're definitely looking at the capacity of the team. And is the capacity, getting exceeded? Are people starting to get burned out? Do I need to bring in a contractor? Do I need to convert a contractor? I mean, they're really thinking about the well-being or the well-being of the team. And does the team really have what they need? And I think you can scale that all the way up. I mean, even, if you're the head of the department and you have a couple of, managers of managers working for you, it's the nice thing about recruiting, and I think most of us appreciate this about the function, is that it's really measurable. We really, we know how many searches we have. We know how long they've been open. We know, for the most part, how many are coming down the pike. There can always be something in a company where we get a big surprise, like during COVID, where we all stopped hiring and then we all started hiring, and it was like pretty much overnight. We didn't have a lot of warning about that. But I think the role of leaders is to kind of really not necessarily smooth it out, because you can't make it smooth. It's sort of lumpy by definition, but to really be ahead of where there could be problems. Yes. Where there could be capacity issues or even overcapacity. What do you do when, for whatever reason, the hiring has sort of slowed down? And most recruiters get very nervous when that happens. They're like, oh my gosh, is my job, what's happening? So as a manager, there's always those, 10 projects that you never have time to do. That when I see things starting to slow down, I start revving up some of those projects. And especially because I can always look at what number of assignments people have and who's got some capacity. And some people really like projects, some don't. And both are fine. Both are really fine. Sure. But as a leader, knowing that and then being able to manage so that you've really got everybody working at full capacity on the right things at the right time for that company.
Yeah, Susan, that's what makes you such a great leader. I loved how you kind of just touched on each of those roles and kind of the secret sauce that makes those roles really successful. And gosh, the care that you've put around and the thoughtfulness that you put into those different members of the team, that's what's made you such a great leader, is just your thoughtfulness. And one of the questions that my last question for you really is, what do you feel like has been your superpower that has really helped fuel and shape your career?
I think others may disagree, but what I think is, I think I'm very empathic. I think I really have a lot of empathy,
Sure.
and I really try to put myself in the shoes of the people that work for me and work with me and that I work for, and understand what's driving them and also what the business needs. I mean, so that's sort of the balance, the business side of things, but always with kind of a lens of empathy. Because I mean, again, and we know recruiting pretty well. I mean, recruiting is hard. Like,
Yeah.
for whatever reason, those of us that have picked it, we love it, but it's not easy.
It's not. It is not easy.
And I mean, I've talked to many HR colleagues, many of our former colleagues at eBay, great, great HR professionals. And I remember them telling me, I would never do recruiting. I love HR, but I would never do recruiting.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate the people that, and not just, I mean, I've managed other organizations besides talent organizations, but just trying to really be empathic about where people are, what makes sense for them. If they're part of the organization, they're there for a reason. They passed whatever bar to get into the organization, and really making sure they can be the most successful that they can be. And I think you might remember one of the things I did as a manager was in January say, okay, let's look at your resume. What do you want on this resume on December 31st? Because that's what we're going to work on this year. And, hopefully it's things that are in my control to offer you as projects. So
Yeah.
if you want to be a great artist, I don't know if I can help you with that. If you want to develop all these other skills in managing or leading or recruiting or even HR, we can do that.
Yeah.
And then it becomes I find that the work people do is really engaging for them, because this is going to help them. This is going to make their career better and their career prospects even better. And again, I don't want them to leave. I don't want them polishing up their resume to leave, but I believe that if their resume is a lot stronger after that year of working together, then first of all, I think they're going to be more committed to our organization. And so it kind of, I mean, I've gone a little bit off track here, but I just think being empathic around where people are is for me, I feel like that's a superpower.
Well, I would totally agree with that. And then if you don't mind, I have 3 superpowers that I'd like to share about you, if you don't mind.
Oh, sure.
Okay. So I've been thinking about this, in preparation for us meeting. And there's three kind of words that really come to mind for me with you. One of them is autonomy and autonomous. One is flexibility. And then one that I already mentioned is just thoughtfulness. Mm-hmm. And when I think about all of these things, when I say autonomy and flexibility, you as a leader, what I loved that you would do with the talent acquisition team and me in particular, you would trust that we knew what we were doing and how to do it and would come up with good ideas, and you'd believe in us. You believe in me in particular and say, I'd come to you with, here's what I think we should do, Susan. And you're like, fantastic, let's do it. Show me what it looks like. Help me understand it. But you'd let me go and run and do it and try it. And maybe it was something that was different than we've always done in the past, but you're okay with that. And then if there was, an opportunity to provide correction or feedback or counseling, like you do that, but you do it in such a thoughtful way that I always felt good about, okay, cool. I've learned this. I can do this differently now going forward. But I always really appreciated that about you, because it allowed me to grow in ways that I never thought I would be able to. And And not all leaders do that. Some
Mhm.
leaders, might be micromanagey and really have their thumb down on you, like looking at every single metric and that wasn't your approach. It was important to you to know the metrics and know where we are and how we're doing and how we're performing and what the hiring leaders were experiencing and the team experiencing, etc. But you operated it in such a thoughtful way to allow that flexibility and that autonomy that it just made people successful. So I really appreciate that in you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we had a wonderful team. I will say that. It was a really good group.
We did, for sure. Well, awesome. Well, Susan, you've given us some amazing nuggets of wealth from all the things that you shared with us. Thank you for that. Thanks for spending time with us on the show. I'd love to circle back with you again in the future to go deeper on different topics, but appreciate you being part of the show today. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Jeremy. And it was a pleasure. And I was thrilled to be invited. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to talk soon.
All righty. Take care.
Such an honor to have Susan Hailey on the show today for the Secrets of Hiring podcast. Hey, make sure you check out our other videos, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss a thing, and also check out, I just posted some new videos around helping you find a job. If you're struggling to find a job and you need some tips and tricks, I've got a 10 episode series that is coming out that you can check out. All right, hey, take care. See ya.